So you leave Holland and Knight and you go in-house at Kia Motors. And now you've got both sides of the fence that you're seeing. What was it that you experienced that led you to develop this legal technology assessment tool?
Well, while I was at Holland and Knight, which I loved, I observed quite a bit of inefficiency. It had nothing to do with the lawyer's expertise at the law. They were true experts, and that expertise was extremely valuable to corporations like Kia. And I never want to lose sight of that or dismiss that. So it wasn't the lawyers themselves, it was the infrastructure around them, the way their expertise was or was not leveraged through process and technology. And so I became very focused on service delivery, not because it's more important than expertise, but because I considered the expertise to already be there. It is the threshold consideration. But once you have the expertise, then you start asking other questions, like how is it leveraged through process and tech? And so I became very focused on service delivery based on my own experience at a law firm. And so when I was in-house, I started sitting with my firms trying to understand how they were delivering legal services to us. And I would actually go on site in the lean world. So I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. It's called going to Gemba, going to the place it is, going to the place where it's happening. So you can observe what's occurring. And I found at every firm I visited, the same thing that I'd seen as an associate at Holland and Knight, amazing lawyers stuck in not particularly good processes and not supported the right way from a tech and infrastructure perspective. And I would have these discussions with the partners who were working for Kia and therefore for me in that my capacity as in-house counsel. And they would often kind of blame IT for not giving them the tools they needed. And I would push back on that. Now, certainly every place can upgrade their tooling. That's what happens with information technology. It moves very quickly. So even if you're completely caught up today, in 6 months, you're 6 months behind. So I would never discourage them from investing more in technology, but I would point out that they weren't even using the tech they already had. And they would ask for examples, and I would say, for example, Microsoft Word. And there we would part ways because they would freely admit that they weren't using advanced technologies like AI. They thought I was a bit daft in suggesting that their associates and paralegals and anyone who was billing to my time wasn't good with Word or Excel or PDF because they use those tools every day. And I tried to explain that just because they use them didn't mean that they use them well. And we'd be at a bit of an impasse. And so I actually came up with a workflow based on tasks we were paying people to do that showed up on our bills. I came up with a workflow of dummy documents and a bunch of interconnected tasks. And I could complete these interconnected tasks in about 20 minutes using the most common software in the world. In this case, Word, Excel, and Adobe Acrobat. The average AmLaw 100 associate and paralegal took over an hour and a half. And in fact, it's closer to 2.5 hours, how long they took to do the same exact tasks, because they were unaware of very basic functionality in the tools they used every single day. And this was not their fault. The tools are not intuitive. In my other life, I actually do work on trying to create more intuitive tools. But for now, and for decades and decades, this is what we've been using. And it's not intuitive. And there's no reason people should automatically know how to use it. And they don't, so they don't. To take one example, lawyers love cross-references. They litter contracts to an unbelievable extent. And by the way, even the litigators write contracts. They just call them settlement agreements. And they use the same kind of cross-references. For 30 years, Word has had an automated cross-reference function. Less than 1% of legal professionals know how to use this function. And by the way, those that do don't end up using it because other people don't know how to use it. And therefore, the document doesn't get set up in a way that makes it useful. And so there are network effects to this where we need to raise the baseline industry-wide to take more advantage of the tools we already have. So I took that workflow and I actually built an automated assessment tool where it would run people through the workflow. They would download the document, again, dummy documents. We don't need to worry about confidentiality. They'd be asked to do the task and upload it so that I could collect more and more data showing exactly what I already knew to be true. And so that was the origin of the LTA. But it's one thing to be able to identify gaps in people's knowledge. It's another thing to fill those gaps. And actually, the competency-based approach lends itself extremely well to training, because what you can do is put people in an environment where you give them a task. And if they know how to do it, they just do it and move on to the next task. But if they don't know how to do it, you can grade it, again, in an automated fashion and say, hey, you got that wrong. Here, watch this video and now try again. And so it's immediate feedback and experiential learning without boring people by teaching them things they already know. And so if they already know everything, they fly through it. And if they know nothing, it takes them a while and they go at whatever pace is appropriate both to their knowledge level and how quickly they pick these up. And by the end of going through a module on contracts or a module on briefs or a module on memos or a module on Excel or PowerPoint, they've either validated that they have the knowledge required or they've acquired that knowledge. And either way, we get professionals who are better able to use the core tools of their trade. That is the origin story of the legal tech assessment. It's in use at now about 100 law schools, dozens of firms, dozens of corporations, dozens of paralegal programs, and yet it's nowhere near the penetration levels that I think it should be. I think it should be ubiquitous because this is the best way to learn, much better than simply watching videos, which you tune out and forget. You do that competency-based experiential component is huge to retention. And by the way, it's not because people retain absolutely everything. If someone learns it, say their first year in paralegal school or their first year of law school, but for whatever reason doesn't use cross-references for the next 3 years, they might not remember exactly where the button is. And Word may even have moved the button by then. But they will remember it exists and they'll be able to go to Google and look it up. And it might take them a minute and a half instead of 30 seconds, but it will save them hours and also in many instances, hundreds of opportunities for human error that the machine will not make. So this is about quality of work. It's also about quality of life because the work that the machine does best is the work that is the most drudgerous. The reason we make those mistakes is because we get bored, and we get bored because it is boring.